Exposed. How an amazing recording and an inspiring German Shepherd transformed my grandfather's legacy. Ethan sat cross-legged in the dusty attic, surrounded by a world of forgotten memories. Among the yellowed papers and cobwebbed artifacts, he stumbled upon a nondescript cassette tape labeled Stories. Upon pressing play, his grandfather's voice washed over him, a soothing cadence that felt like a long-lost embrace. The nostalgia hit him like a tidal wave, sparking bittersweet memories of a man whose unfulfilled dreams echoed in both heart and home. He heard tales of struggle and resilience, and yet, in each sorrow, there was an indelible thread of hope and raw emotion. This was not just a simple recording. These were the heartbreaks and triumphs of a man who once wielded music as his lifeblood. Yet, beneath the surface of that sentimental warmth, Ethan felt a deflating anxiety swell. His own dreams had been obscured by the weight of expectations that had been passed down, towering over him like ominous storm clouds. The pressure to follow a conventional career path had gripped him since childhood, stifling his burgeoning passion for music. Could he embrace a legacy shaped by the same hands that crafted beautiful melodies? In the midst of this familial narrative, Ethan wrestled with discontent. Questions emerged, sharp like knives. What if he chose music, only to fail? The thought echoed ominously, dredging up insecurities tied to his own self-worth. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he immersed himself in each story, a flicker of determination ignited within him. His grandfather's life was not merely one of missed opportunities. It was an anthem of perseverance against the rhythm of life's harsh realities. The video of Max, the loyal German Shepherd, playing joyfully in the yard, filled Ethan's heart with warmth and aching nostalgia. There was something profoundly connecting about watching a man pour talent into his art, while sharing life with his dog. Yet, in the corners of his mind, shadows loomed. The outside world often hailed safety over artistry, practicality over passion. The thought of standing on a stage, vulnerable and exposed, sent tremors through Ethan's body. He couldn't ignore the voice of doubt festering in his thoughts. What if he didn't live up to the legacy? What if the audience turned away, uninterested in the real him? With Max beside him, offering silent yet unwavering support, Ethan felt torn between honoring his grandfather and bowing to the relentless expectations bestowed upon him. The impending talent showcase loomed like a surreal specter, whispering temptations to forge his own path, yet sending waves of panic crashing over him. A bitter swell of internal conflict bubbled to the surface, urging Ethan to confront his fears head-on. Yet the question remained: could he truly step into his grandfather's shoes and forge a new melody of his own? As the date approached, he could feel the suffocating grip of fear clutching his throat, tightening with each passing day. Max's watchful eyes seemed to transmit an unspoken challenge. Be brave, be bold, and yet, as visions of glory danced before his eyes, so did images of failure and disappointment entwined in dark realities that threatened to drown his burgeoning hope. Ethan inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of not just his dreams, but the legacy of those who came before him, suffocating him in anxious uncertainty. Would he be able to break free from the chains of expectation? The stage awaited, but what awaited him in the spotlight? Ethan found himself pacing in the cramped living room, the faint sound of the tape replaying in his mind like an echo, his grandfather's voice resonating with each step he took. Each footprint seemed to mark a moment of decision, fueling both doubt and determination. The tape had thrust him into a cognitive spiral, demanding he confront an inner dissonance he had long avoided. With the showcase looming, he found solace in Max's presence, the German Shepherd now lying at his feet, a silent witness to his turmoil. The rhythmic thud of his tail against the wood floor seemed to beat in time with his thumping heart. Each beat timed to a growing realization. Art was never just about applause. It was also about authenticity. yet the fear of inadequacy clung to him like a shadow. Ethan stopped to glance at the guitar propped against the wall, a forgotten relic of his unpursued passion. Its lacquered surface, glinting in the late afternoon sun, felt like a beacon luring him closer, promising a connection to his grandfather, to the music that echoed through his stories. But as he reached for it, a wave of anxiety surged through him. Would the strings resonate with the same power, the same depth of history his grandfather's hands had coaxed from them? The relentless mental images of failure and criticism wove through his consciousness, threatening to drown him in a sea of self-doubt. Doubts cascaded like an avalanche. What if he disappointed not just himself, but the legacy he so desperately wanted to honor? Stepping deeper into his own anxiety, he reached for the guitar, fingers hesitant upon the strings. Memories of family gatherings flooded his mind. Laughter competed with the sounds of his father's resolute insistences on real jobs and security. He gently plucked a few notes, testing the air with their hesitant vibrations. The sound reverberated, filling the small space like an uninvited guest. Each note was a struggle between embracing his urge to create and the persistent whisper of fear, the voice that gnawed at him, reminding him of his inadequacies. Yet as he continued, those nascent sounds unfurled slowly, transforming doubt into something tangible. It was a tentative exploration, each pluck unleashing a forgotten piece of yearning, intertwined with longing for affirmation. As if sensing the shift, Max lifted his head, eyes bright with encouragement, grounding Ethan with unwavering solidity. A flicker ignited within him. What if, instead of fearing what others expected, he aimed to discover what his own music could say, what it could unveil about himself? Perhaps this was not about living up to his grandfather's legacy alone, but also about weaving his narrative into the fabric of something larger. The prospect sent a thrill racing through him. Suddenly, the ticking clock grew louder as the hour approached. He would have to face the audience, the eyes brimming with expectations similar to his own. Yet, could he embrace this challenge instead of shying away? The uncertainty of how he would be received gnawed at him still, but now it swirled with a burgeoning sense of purpose. Ethan made a decision, a quiet vow resonating within his heart. He would take a step into the unknown, reclaiming the narrative of his destiny despite the looming fear of obsolescence. But as his resolve strengthened, another question emerged, sharp and unyielding. Could he really translate this epiphany into the performance that awaited him? Max stood, tail wagging, urging him forward. The moment of truth was closing in, yet the very air crackled with potential. With renewed determination, Ethan took a deep breath and prepared to embrace his truth. The stage awaited, but was he ready to embrace the voice that lay dormant within him? Standing before the guitar, Ethan felt a heat radiating from his core, shifting his hesitations into assertive intention. Each string seemed to hum with untapped energy, as if echoing the very spirit of his grandfather. This was a moment of revelation. A realization began to sink in. His artistry wasn't merely a vessel for validation, it was profoundly personal, a mosaic of his truth. Closing his eyes, he could hear his grandfather's voice as clear as if he were sitting beside him, poring over his cherished memories. Music was a language that connected generations, a timeless thread weaving through familial ties. But Ethan needed to learn how to speak that language authentically, not just within the boundaries set by others' expectations. With that thought propelling him, he strummed a chord, allowing the sound to resonate through him, vibrating the walls of doubt surrounding his spirit. He felt a flicker of joy with the realization of how liberating it could be to focus solely on what he wanted to express. It was a daring shift in perspective, elevating him from that paralyzing fear of failure. Instead of dwelling on the looming performance, he could immerse himself in crafting an homage, an expression of his respect for his grandfather, but also a declaration of himself. The idea unfurled like the delicate petals of a flower after a rainstorm. Ethan glanced down at Max, whose dark eyes sparkled with an understanding that transcended words. The loyal dog remained a grounding force, a reminder that this journey was not one of isolation, but partnership. Max had always been there, unconditionally supportive, embodying the essence of companionship that never judged Ethan's internal battles. Confidently, Ethan placed his fingers back on the strings, each movement becoming more deliberate and self-assured. He recalled all the moments he had held back from sharing his music, the defeats he had allowed to define him. The refrain of self-sabotage echoed into silence, replaced by a new mantra. He could either risk vulnerability and grow, or resign himself to a life of mediocrity. The stakes were high, yet the potential rewards danced tantalizingly before him. He found himself crafting a melody, fluid and unrestrained, a reflection of the harmonics of his heritage. Notes cascaded out like water flowing over stones, each one a conversation with his past, yet a pathway to his future. Still, a lingering fear gnawed at the edges of this burgeoning confidence. Digging deeper into the reservoir of his memories, he confronted the images that had plagued him, the sharp criticisms, the doubts instilled by his father, the societal pressures pushing him towards safer choices. Would this leap into authenticity invite backlash? Would his father understand, or would he see only the familiar path of disappointment? Despite the uncertainty, Ethan felt the embers of courage flickering and growing inside of him. It was time to confront those fears, to engage not just with the audience waiting for him, but with the inner critic that had long held him captive. He visualized himself on stage, guitar in hand, and for the first time his heart raced with the thrill of possibility rather than the dread of judgment. As he prepared to embrace this new chapter, an unexpected realization surged through him. He wasn't just honoring his grandfather, he was also stepping into his own legacy. With renewed determination, Ethan stood, guitar cradled under his arm, ready to face a world that had once felt so daunting. He would invite the audience into his story, filled with fractures and triumphs, rather than present a polished performance scripted by fear. But as the realization swirled within him, another thought loomed. Could he sustain this momentum when facing the ultimate moment of vulnerability? Max wagged his tail, the echoes of their possible journey settling into a shared rhythm. The stage awaited, the spotlight lit, but within Ethan the most vital question was yet to come. Would he reveal the unfiltered depths of his artistry, or would he still falter at the precipice of his own aspirations? The air pulsed around Ethan as he stepped outside, guitar slung over his shoulder, a tangible weight of purpose anchoring him to the moment. The sun bathed the neighborhood in warm hues, yet a chill circled his mind, mingling with anticipation. He needed to confront the growing vortex of vulnerability swirling within. Overhead, a flock of birds swooped gracefully, an effortless dance of freedom Ethan yearned to embody. Could he translate that freedom into his music? He ambled down the familiar path, each step accompanied by Max's reassuring presence. The dog bounded ahead, sniffing the air as if sensing the excitement in its currents. Ethan spotted an empty park bench and paused. Sitting down, he fingered the strings, allowing his thoughts to crystallize in the form of sound. Here, surrounded by the vibrant life of the neighborhood, he could infuse the intricacies of his identity into the melody. Rapidly, an intricate tune emerged, alive and breathing, a composition that encapsulated both reverence for his grandfather and an assertion of his individuality. However, midway through this impromptu session, doubt crept in like a shadow. What if this melody was merely a shadow of what he aspired to create? The question twisted in his gut, prompting him to stop playing, hands frozen above the strings. How many times had he stifled his voice under the weight of self-imposed expectations? Max approached, resting his head on Ethan's knee, eyes brimming with an unwavering loyalty that coaxed the young man back onto the path. The dog didn't care about perfection. He simply reveled in the authenticity Ethan was beginning to uncover. With renewed fervor, Ethan strummed again, this time pouring every ounce of feeling into every note, aware that flaws could lead to growth. But what lay beyond this threshold? The memory of his father's cutting remarks floated to the forefront. Would his father dismiss this new chapter? Would bringing his true self to the surface incite old tensions? Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing the image to fade. The greatest risk wasn't sharing his music, it was ignoring the imperative to truly live it. With every passing moment, the tension in his chest morphed into a resolute determination. He recognized the clear dichotomy between staying in the safe confines of pretense and daring to share the unvarnished essence of himself. He needed to push past the fear, to unveil the raw edges of his artistry, not just to the world, but to himself. He abruptly stood, inspired, fueled by a newfound drive. A vision crystallized in his mind. An intimate performance, small but personal. A gathering where vulnerability shaped connection. The thought electrified him as he mentally began to construct the ideal space for this leap. Turning to Max, he smiled, the dog flicking his ears in curiosity, as if he had grasped the significance of the moment. Ethan envisioned old friends, familiar faces, those who would willingly embrace the authenticity he was about to offer. But deeper still was the labyrinth of emotions he was navigating. Would they meet this new version of him with open arms, or would he be met with the familiar critique? Ethan tightened the strap of his guitar, feeling the warm wood against his back, and with a determined gaze, he started walking again. Confidence built with each step. Yet, the looming question remained. How would he orchestrate this meeting of self-discovery and acceptance in the face of potential rejection? Ethan inhaled sharply, his heart thrumming with resolve and trepidation. The world awaited a performance, one that would force him to confront everything he had pushed aside. Would he emerge triumphant, exposing the unfiltered depths of his artistry? Or would this leap render him more vulnerable than he'd ever anticipated? As Ethan navigated his neighborhood, the opalescent rays of sunlight flickered through the leaves above, illuminating the path ahead in a soft golden glow. Each footfall seemed to echo a silent promise resonating within him, one of honesty, exploration, and emergence. The warmth enveloped him, yet an undercurrent of tension still laced his thoughts, threading through the excitement of his upcoming performance. The idea of gathering friends to share his music was exhilarating, but fraught with anxiety. He had envisioned this moment as an unveiling, a leap into a realm where he could express his truth, but the fear of inadequacy still loomed. As he instinctively adjusted the strap of his guitar, he wrestled with internal narratives. Was it courageous to expose himself in such raw form? Or foolish? Had he spent so long crafting an identity that fitted neatly into societal expectations that he now risked unraveling it in the pursuit of authenticity? Questions spiraled around him, each one demanding attention. Today's resolve threatened to flicker under the pressure of doubt. What if the melodies he had painstakingly crafted would falter under scrutiny? What if his friends couldn't embrace the deeper waters he sought to navigate? Max, sensing his unease, ambled close, his furry bulk a comforting presence. Ethan ruffled the dog's ear. It was incredible how this one creature, with his boundless enthusiasm for life, established clarity amidst chaos. Unlike humans, Max didn't worry about judgment, he simply seized each moment of joy. Inspired, Ethan realized this was the essence he needed to embrace, a commitment to living the experience rather than merely preparing for it. He wouldn't let fear act as his compass. Ethan quickened his pace, a rhythm pulsing between his heart and breath, mirroring the melody still echoing in his mind. He needed to put together a playlist that encapsulated his journey, a tapestry woven with the threads of his experiences, memories, and emotions. Each song would be an invitation, a call to those who had walked with him through his struggles and triumphs. Setting benchmarks of excellence seemed pointless. The intention was connection, not perfection. Back home, he flung open the door to his room, guitar in hand. The walls bore witness to the evolution of his artistry over the years, scribbles of song lyrics permeating the space. He breathed deeply, settling into that comforting milieu, as a smile crept across his face. He could visualize it. Each piece was a puzzle that told his story. But as the excitement surged, an old echo of apprehension whispered back into the fold. His father's voice, so sharp and critical, interceded. Would he understand? Could he draw the line between disappointment and acceptance? Would Ethan disappoint himself by not succeeding in this venture, by enlarging the chasm of misunderstanding even more? With a determined shake of his head, Ethan dismissed the thoughts. He wouldn't allow the fear of rejection to cloud his intentions. This time, he needed to be his own champion. Taking a seat on the edge of his bed, he began to map out the order of his set, with titles and scribbled notes. Marks of recognition turned into real music. Emotions surged within him. Each strum vibrated with possibility, a testament to where he had been and where he hoped to go. But even as sweat began to beat against his brow, excitement coursing through his fingertips, He recognized that the culmination of this performance was rapidly approaching. Would he be ready to stand before his closest companions, bearing his soul? The thoughts churned, unanswered, as the looming date neared. And within those harrowing depths of fear and hope, a new clarity began to emerge, one that called him toward a confrontation bigger than his music, a needed conversation with his father. The path was becoming clearer, but another question lingered just beneath the surface. How would he navigate this fragile territory without losing himself to the shadows of judgment? He sat on the edge of his bed, scribbling notes and crossing out lines, the hum of Max's steady breathing providing a comforting backdrop to his task. Each stroke of the pen felt like a tiny victory, yet an undercurrent of anxiety began to creep back into his thoughts. He stopped, resting his guitar on his knee, staring vacantly at the wall. What was it that held him back? Why did the very act of sharing his art feel like stepping off a precipice? The answer danced around, elusive yet persistent, as if the room itself pressed its walls closer, closing him off to his own thoughts. It wasn't simply the fear of being judged. There was something deeper, a wound that needed addressing. He thought of his father, the razor-sharp words delivered with a precision that cut deeper than any blade. The memories crashed in waves, frustration at missed expectations, disappointment laced under every optimistic ambition that seemed to fall flat. Ethan had spent countless nights replaying old conversations, obsessively trying to decipher the meaning behind the judgmental undertones. It was exhausting. With newfound resolve, he rose. No longer could he let his father's opinions dictate his self-worth. He needed to confront this ghost, if the performance was to mean anything more than just a superficial act of courage. As he paced the room, he envisioned conversations, the questions he would ask, the statements he longed to make. What was he scared of? Rejection? Or perhaps enlightenment? He grabbed his phone, searching for anything to help him confront this looming confrontation. But his hand hesitated over the contact labeled Dad. What if this phone call didn't lead to reconciliation but instead buried him beneath a landslide of unresolved grievances? Ethan's mouth went dry. This was the very terrain he had avoided, yet here he was, peering into the darkness. He sank back down, the weight of the call pressing heavily in his chest. Clenching his hands around the phone, he performed a deep inward breath. Sabotage and self-doubt erupted into the forefront of his mind, testing the limits of his newfound determination. Still, beneath it all lay a tentative heartbeat of hope, one gentle do-over that whispered reassurance. Perhaps the call would reveal something unforeseen, an understanding or an apology he had mythologized. The clock ticked loudly, a metronome counting down toward the performance and the inevitable conversation. Each second was a reminder that time was slipping, pushing him toward a decision. He caught a glimpse of Max looking up at him, tail thumping softly against the floor. The pure loyalty mirrored back sparked something within him. He had to embrace vulnerability, just like he would do with his music. Finally, with a deep breath, he brought the phone to his ear. Anticipation knotted his stomach as the call connected, each ring resonating in sync with the nervous drumbeats of his heart. In that electric moment, he merged two pivotal aspects of his life, music and family, and readied himself to let truth speak. "Dad," he began, voice firm yet yielding, "there's something we need to talk about." As the line hummed with his father's response, a newfound clarity filled the air, revealing what lay ahead. Conflict, buoyed by the promise of resolution. Would his father hear him? Would their relationship mend through these chords of confrontation? The journey had just begun, and the echo of his performance loomed. Whether it would elevate or resonate uncomfortably remained unanswered, a palpable tension awaiting exploration. The silence stretched between Ethan and his father, a tense bridge requiring careful navigation. The slightest shift in tone, a hesitant reply, both felt loaded with unspoken implications. Mustering courage, Ethan pressed on. "I've been reflecting on everything you've said over the years about the music, about me." He could hear his father's sharp intake of breath, a signal that the conversation was about to take a sharp turn. Ethan's heart raced, yet he steeled himself, knowing this moment would either shackle or liberate him. "I need to understand why your words felt like daggers to me." Why, I've spent so much time trying to prove I'm worth something to you, he stated, fighting the tremor that threatened to break his resolve. Son, his father began, but Ethan cut him off, a surge of emotion pushing him forward. No, let me finish, he said, his voice steadying. I need to know if you see me, not just as your son who picked up a guitar, but as someone with dreams, someone who can create. You're not the only voice in my head anymore. The challenge of his words hung in the air, creating space for either vulnerability or defense. As his father began to respond, the words flowed out in a mix of regret and defensiveness, fashioned in a tone accustomed to authority. I was hard on you because I wanted you to succeed, to have a better life than I did. You need to know how difficult this world is. There it was, the familiar blend of concern and criticism. But beneath that layer, Ethan sensed discomfort. I get it, Dad. You were trying to protect me. But at what cost? He countered, feeling the heat of confrontation push him into uncharted territory. Each question ignited an understanding and a silent reproach. Can we try to build a relationship where my dreams aren't stifled by fear of sorry outcomes? Where I can share my music without it being a battleground? For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them again, this time softer, almost contemplative. He imagined his father weighing his words against the backdrop of their shared history. A flicker of something new ignited within Ethan. Was it hope? Ethan, I didn't realize. His father's voice softened. I didn't mean to stifle your dreams. I was scared of watching you fail. I see you're passionate, but it's hard to reconcile that with my fears. The admission expanded in his chest like a breath of fresh air. Here was the opportunity to rewrite years of hurt and misunderstanding, to weave a thread of empathy into the frayed fabric of their connection. Then let's talk about it. Let's not dance around the fear anymore. Let's be real with each other. The conversation unfolded like a tapestry, each thread of shared experience adding depth to their dialogue. Voices raised and lowered in ebbs and flows, exposing vulnerabilities long hidden beneath protective bravado. They recounted missed moments and tethered dreams, directly confronting truths often shrouded in family lore. With each revelation, Ethan felt an incredible weight lift, as if the burdens he had carried were softly surrendered to a place of acceptance. As they spoke, an idea began to crystallize in his mind. A potential song, a collaboration of sorts, a narrative blending heartache and reconciliation, designed to resonate with both them. But even amidst this catharsis, another fear nagged at him, one constructed of how to express the rawness of this moment through music, and if his father would embrace this facet of him. He could almost see the performance stage in his mind, the notes echoing not just his own journey, but inviting his father to participate with him. Yet, a deeper question loomed. Could this fragile new understanding survive the pressures outside the comforting walls of his room? Dad, when we hang up, I'm going to write a song about this. About us, Ethan declared, feeling the rush of energy seeping into his voice. The words felt like a promise, not just to himself but to his father, daring them both to redefine their relationship. Yet, as the call ended, a ripple of doubt coursed through him. Would his father truly accept this version of him? Would they find a way to navigate not only the love, but the complexities of art and emotion intertwined? With his guitar resting in his lap and Max at his side, he began to pluck the strings, igniting the blend of hope and apprehension that dictated his next steps. The song was just unfolding within him, but the real test lay just beyond the horizon. Would he have the courage to share this new truth with an audience awaiting his creation? This was just the beginning, and the stage of vulnerability awaited. The soft strum of the guitar filled the room, each note vibrating with the tension coiling within Ethan. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of a fraught conversation, he faced the hard truth. He wanted not only his father's recognition, but the world to see him as something more than just a hesitant young man with musical aspirations. A shiver of excitement coursed through him, mingling with doubt. What if he failed to encapsulate this pivotal moment in song? What if it fell flat, failing to convey the raw emotions that had danced on the edge of their dialogue? Scrunching up his brow, Ethan focused on weaving the thread of reconciliation into a melody, Yet insecurity lingered like a shadow. With each pluck of the strings, he began to craft lyrics. The chorus surged forth effortlessly, speaking not just of love, but of breaking the cyclical traps of fear. He found himself capturing the urgency of vulnerability, the yearning to redefine a father-son relationship that had once suffocated him, but was now slowly transforming into something promising. Each word felt like a release, a catharsis, but as he moved into the verses, the reality of sharing this with an audience loomed larger. Ethan paused, his confidence faltering as thoughts spiraled around him. What if this was just a delusion of courage? The world often felt adorned with judgment, a thrumming chorus of critics. "Hey, chill out a bit, Ethan," Max nudged him gently, his warm, trusting eyes peering up at his owner. "Just breathe. It's just you and the music right now." Ethan chuckled softly, grateful for the grounding presence of his loyal friend. He resumed the rhythm, feeling more connected to the intent behind the notes and lyrics. The song took shape, every strum echoing the rhythm of his heart. A pulsating reminder that, in the end, this was his truth to share. Yet tension persisted. The question of whether he could present this song to an audience, to friends and family, still clung to him like a wet blanket. What if they rejected his artistry, a reflection of his very self? What if he's not good enough to perform this? He mused inwardly, conflicted between hope and fear. With his thoughts spiraling, he grabbed his notebook and jotted down exactly how he felt. What if the only way to live unapologetically is to embrace the risk of rejection? The weight of that revelation struck deeper than he anticipated. Ethan realized he had to feel the fear and move forward regardless. If he truly sought acceptance from himself and others, that necessary step hinged on courage, the kind he had just glimpsed through his conversation with his father. He couldn't just strum chords behind closed doors anymore. The world needed to hear him sing. As he sat there in the dim light of his room, him and his music, he began to scheme. Maybe tonight he could invite a few friends over, ask them to give his song a listen. Something radical ignited in him, the opportunity to test his music wrapped in vulnerability, tangled with the fears he'd begun to shed in conversation. He placed his guitar down, adrenaline coursing through him, conjuring the image of their faces, balancing anticipation against that gnawing fear of judgment. This was not merely about song, this was personal evolution unfurling right in front of him. So, with a rush of resolve, Ethan sent out a few messages, his fingers flying across the screen as he invited friends for a mini jam session. As the responses rolled in, enthusiastic confirmations signaling support, he felt anchored. But as he prepared for the evening, a deeper realization loomed. Was he truly ready to bare his soul, both in music and in person? The anticipation of revealing the raw truth was exhilarating, yet terrifying. As twilight descended and he readied his room, the air crackling with excitement, a new question danced on the edge of his thoughts. What would it mean to share his authentic self with others, and could he confront the vastness of that vulnerability? Tonight would mark a turning point. He could only hope it led him toward an unveiling he'd never expected. As the sun stooped below the horizon, the warm hues of twilight spilled into his room, wrapping Ethan in an ethereal glow. His guitar, resting against his leg, felt like an extension of himself, raw, unfinished, and brimming with potential. He felt the weight of the evening pressing down on him. The air was infused with the scent of impending revelation. Ethan's heart hammered against his chest as he prepared for the arrival of his friends. By now, the nervous excitement was spiraling into something palpable. Was he really ready to step into the light, to unveil not just a melody, but a piece of his essence? With every tick of the clock, the moment drew closer, reminding him of the stakes involved. The doorbell rang, pulling him back from his tumultuous whirlpool of thought. He took a steadying breath and moved to unlock the door, welcoming his friends with an attempted lightness he didn't completely feel. They stepped in, bringing a rush of laughter and conversation, the familiar sounds of camaraderie that shook away the quiet doubt still lurking within him. "Where's that song you've been hiding?" Jenna teased, her smile infectious. A flicker of warmth nestled in his chest. It was easy to forget the fear when surrounded by supportive friends. But as they settled in, a thin veil of anxiety crept back over him, whispering cruel reminders of his worries. With the atmosphere growing lively, Ethan grabbed his guitar, fingers trembling slightly against the strings. The spotlight of their attention felt increasingly tangible, a cruel paradox that both excited and terrified him. But in that moment, a choice emerged. He could either shrink back or engage with his truth. "Okay, this is an original," he announced, his voice wavering with uncertainty. It felt surreal. The very act of sharing felt like teetering on the edge of a cliff, ready to plunge into the unknown. But he was here now, letting the music take the lead. As he began to strum, each note unfurled the intricate tapestry of emotions he had woven into the song. The melody cradled his vulnerability, shifting from anxious strumming to a more confident rhythm. With every line he sang, he glimpsed the truth behind his words, a revelation that resonated far beyond the notes. He wasn't just a hesitant boy seeking approval. He was an artist, crafting his narrative through sound. The song reached its crescendo, and he could feel their gaze enveloping him, gleaming with anticipation. Ethan could almost touch the essence of connection, as their expressions mirrored his own struggle, joy, and yearning. The chorus surged through him, carrying with it a sense of release. This was not merely an exhibition, but an offer of his authentic self. When the last chord faded into the softened air, silence descended. For a moment, time hung suspended while he searched his friends' faces, the weight of their judgment suffocating. Had he bared himself and found acceptance, or had he exposed himself only to be cast aside? It was Jenna who broke the quiet, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Ethan, that was really beautiful," she said, and the sincerity in her voice added a layer of warmth to his burgeoning confidence. One by one, his friends chimed in, sharing their admiration, praising the depth of the lyrics and the emotion in his performance. Gradually, the pulse of fear started to ebb. This moment was transformative. Yet within the swell of warmth brewed an even greater question. What would it mean for him moving forward? The endorsement from his friends opened a door, beckoning him towards a more exposed life, one that danced delicately along the line of risk and reward. Yet self-doubt was a cunning adversary. As they closed the evening with laughter and chatter, he grappled with the newfound reality of stepping further into his authentic self. Was he truly prepared to confront the complexities of sharing not just his music, but the vulnerabilities tied to it? With Max curled beside him, Ethan gazed into the dimming light, a fresh resolve forming. This was only the beginning. He needed to carve out a space in the world where vulnerability didn't simply flicker, but shone brightly in freedom. As the night deepened and their voices grew softer, one thought lingered in Ethan's mind, urging him forward. What would it mean to carry this vulnerability into uncharted territories, to share this newfound voice with those beyond his immediate circle? Ethan stood at the edge of the stage, the welcoming hum of voices filling the air. The night had arrived, his moment to share his journey, to step into the spotlight beneath the bright beams shining down on him. He felt both exhilarated and unsettled, a raw mix of anticipation and anxiety intertwining in a palpable tension. This was not just about music, it was about reclaiming his identity, claiming a piece of his grandfather's legacy while infusing it with his own truth. His friends were there, seated among a small but enthusiastic crowd, their faces glowing with support, igniting that familiar flicker of courage inside him. The music he had crafted echoed in his mind, a sonorous wave of meaning, compelling him forward with its unreleased power. As he grasped his guitar, familiar fingers strumming with a blend of insecurity and confidence, he scanned the audience. Each face represented a chapter of his life, those who had witnessed his struggles and triumphs, including the tentative steps toward artistic expression. In that moment of connection, he felt a rush of clarity flood through him. This performance was not merely a showcase of notes, it was an invitation to vulnerability, a celebration woven from threads of fear and hope. He began to play, the melody flowing like a river, punctuated with echoes of his grandfather's storytelling. With every chord, the sound enveloped him, emboldening his spirit. The lyrics poured out, merging memories and emotions, exploring the themes of familial expectations and the longing for acceptance. It was daunting, yet liberating to present this part of himself, raw and unfiltered. As he reached the chorus, a wave of recognition rippled through the audience, their heads bobbing in sync with the rhythm. Their energy became a chorus of encouragement. The applause after each verse didn't just validate his artistic journey. It acknowledged his resolve to confront fears that had long haunted him. In that defining moment, Ethan internalized a profound realization. He was not merely sharing music. He was carving out a space for discourse on legacy, vulnerability, and connection. Authenticity rippled through his performance as he began to understand that sharing his art meant sharing his story, thus fortifying an indestructible bond with his grandfather's spirit while paving the way for his own. As the final notes lingered in the air, mingled with cheers, he stood amid the thunderous applause, a surge of triumph coursing through him. His body swelled with a renewed sense of self, grounded in the recognition of his own capabilities. The tight grip of fear that once shackled him now loosened, replaced by a steadfast confidence nurtured by acceptance and applause. Stepping off the stage, Ethan felt lighter, as if chipping away layers of insecurity had not only revealed his musical self, but ushered in recognition as an artist, and as a man. Each step towards his friends was met with congratulatory hugs and genuine praise, affirming his transformation. "Ethan, that was incredible," Jenna exclaimed, her excitement contagious. "You have to write more." "Yeah, you need to keep sharing. We're here for you," another friend chimed in, bubbling with enthusiasm. With each compliment, he felt the pangs of anxiety dissipate, replaced by a warm glow of fulfillment. This was his achievement, not just in the realm of music, but at a deeply personal level. By stepping into the spotlight, he had stepped into himself, moving gracefully from the shadows of inherited expectations into a luminous declaration of autonomy. Unsure of what lay ahead, he felt ready to face it. Reclaiming his narrative would take constant effort, perhaps reconciling deeper familial ties and further solidifying his artistry. But tonight had proven something vital. Vulnerability was not a weakness but strength, a catalyst for connection, a bridge to understanding. Ethan turned to his friends, beaming with a new sense of purpose. "There's so much more to come. I want to keep sharing these stories, exploring this thread that connects us all," he declared, his voice steady with resolve. As he embraced his friends, surrounded by laughter, he knew he had embarked on a new journey, a path illuminated by the convergence of courage and artistry, upheld by the legacy of his grandfather and his own renewed essence. Now was the moment for action. Share in this journey of transformation, make your voice heard, declare your truth. If you haven't already, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories filled with personal triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these narratives that spark change. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your insights matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's inspire others to embrace their vulnerabilities.